Okay, good morning, everybody. Actually, good morning to Toronto, good day, the rest of the world, and good afternoon, Mumbai, India. I am Theo Paredes. I'm a professor of strategic management at the Schulich School of Business, and I'm delighted to be joined by all of you across the world to discuss something that, of course, is at the top of our minds, but which has to do with the pandemic that the entire world is facing. And as part of the Schulich program to connect with its community and share some of the insights and the ideas from the thought leaders that we have, we decided that it was important, since we have a strong presence in India, that we have a series also that focuses explicitly on India and the response to the pandemic in India. Together with me is Rantu Basu, that you probably all have, in one way or the other, interacted with at various points. Rantu is our partner in India, is a founding member of the Quest Partners, and has been working with us for the last 50 years in building Schulich's presence in India. So as I said, we have three exceptional members of the business community of India, but also great friends of the Schulich School of Business, members of the India Advisory Board of the Schulich School of Business, that are today with us to share some of their experiences, some of their knowledge, some of their insights, some of their reactions to how the world economy, the world's governments have been responding to the pandemic, but very critically, how things are unfolding in India, what are the unique challenges that India is facing, what businesses are doing in India in that regard, and what we as individuals, as part of this, responding to this crisis should be doing. We have Mr. O.P. Bhatt, Mr. Bhaskar Pramanik, and Dr. Raghunatha with us. Mr. O.P. Bhatt is somebody who is very well known to the financial community in India because he has been a career banker. He actually, as they say in North America, is started as a teller and became all the way to be the chairman of the bank. He had a great career in the largest and most critical bank of India, the State Bank of India, where he has pretty much served in all the roles and all the executive roles. I will just highlight the two most important: as head of the entire State Bank Group, which consists of a number of domestic and international bank subsidiaries and other non-bank businesses. He was then managing director of the State Bank of India. And most recently, he was also the chairman of the State Bank of India. So literally from the bottom all the way to the top. And as those people that are familiar with India know, State Bank of India is the largest banking organization in India. It has over 200,000 employees. And as you will hear from his comment, he has been, and I think is appropriate to say, the person that brought State Bank of India to the 21st century in the sense of technology, relationship to customers, product range, and at the same time supporting the government in its social policies where the government was pushing the financial sector to become so critical to the development of India. Since stepping down from the State Bank of India chairmanship, Mr. Bhatt has been on the board of directors and helping a number of other companies like Tata Consultancy Services, that is well known to everybody, and Tata Steel, but also Standard Chartered and a couple of other state banks. Very importantly for all of us, Mr. Bhatt is a very active member of the Schulich Advisory Board in India and has given us lots of ideas, lots of support, and all his energy. So with that, I would like to ask him to share some comments with us about how India business and government is responding to the crisis.
So thank you, Theo. And thanks everybody for making the time to come and participate in this webinar. Special thanks to Schulich for making this happen. I have a soft corner for Schulich, which is why I'm here. Of late, there have been a large number of conversations around this COVID. These conversations are in families and in communities, in boardrooms and in webinars. Most of the conversation, as I have seen, is centering around either the health issue. So it's about testing and tracking, it's about treatment, it's about vaccines, how many people are getting infected, what is the ratio of infection to deaths, when will the vaccine come, how much will it cost, etc., etc. There is a huge amount of conversation which goes around this axis. There is another axis, which is the economic axis. Is the world headed for a recession? Is India headed for a recession? How long will it take? What will it take to pull you out of this recession? It's going to be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, V shape, U shape, L shape. And I always talk about the bathtub shape, which nobody talks about, right? Which means it's an elongated L, and at some point in time, it might not go up. So these are the two major areas in which most of the COVID related conversations are taking place. Health, rightly so. Economy, also rightly so. But as these conversations have taken place, somehow I have got fixated on a third area about which there is a lot of information which is available, but there is not enough serious conversation that is taking place around it, and which is about people. You see, in the US alone, about 10 million people filed for unemployment relief in 2 weeks. In Bangladesh, in the garment industry alone, 1 million people were rendered jobless. If you go to the Gulf countries where there are a large number of Indians, the Indians there who are now jobless live in virtual prisons, and the government is not trying to make arrangements to get them back to India. And if you look at India here, if you look at the television screens and the newspapers, you see those images of hundreds of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of migrant labor, which is desperately trying to leave wherever they are in the metros, Delhi, Bombay, Hyderabad, back to their villages. These people have suddenly become destitute. They are homeless. They are moneyless. They don't have food. What they are living with is fear, desperation, uncertainty, grief. And there is nobody who is leading out a helping hand to them. So there are a lot of dispensations and proclamations. There is a lot of rules and regulations. There is a lot of positive statements being made about they being fed or they being cared for, or this will happen and that will happen. But if this is happening in India, and if it is happening in other parts of the world like Europe or UK or America, the thought that comes to my mind, or the thought that came to my mind repeatedly, is that after maybe 200 plus years of modern economic growth post the Industrial Revolution in the UK, is this where we are? That, just 1 week of lockdown or 15 days of lockdown, one small teeny weeny virus, it has dislocated the entire world. And the kind of economic and social structure that we, the most civilized species in the universe, has created, is not able to take care of these people. Now, these are the people who are my ecosystem. I live a great life because there is somebody who drives my car, somebody who cuts my hair, somebody who buys vegetables, delivers milk, makes food, all kinds of things. And these are the people who are in difficulty today. So I've been thinking about these things, and I find that there are a fair number of people who are thinking about these things. For many people, the kind of conversation that they make has had a little shift. There is a huge reset taking place in the minds of people, Post-COVID, as there is less travel, as there is less fuel burning, as there is less pollution, you can breathe the air, which is a little cleaner. The water is better. The birds are coming back. The animals are there all over the place. They're roaming cities. There are a lot of videos which I get that there are animals, in the streets of London and in Australia and in New York and in Mumbai. There were dolphins sighted off the coast. There were flamingos somewhere near, New Mumbai and all that. All those kinds of things are happening. So a lot of people are, talking and thinking differently, as if there is a reset because of the COVID, the way people are thinking, about their aspirations, values, future, civilization, etc. And there is a lot of, fear and morbidity also. For example, I've been told several times that, above 60 years, you are in danger. I'm 70 plus actually, right? So you're not supposed to go out to the house. I don't even look out of the window because, the question that has been coming to my mind again and again is, after COVID, what? Will we relapse to this old socio-economic political cycle? Or will this be a reset to something new? And there have been some thoughts or some strands of thoughts which have been there around these lines. Some people call it, conscious capitalism. In the US, they call it, the B corporations. So the idea is that, before the GFC, which is the global financial crisis, the accepted wisdom was that a corporate or a company, it's entirely for the benefit of the shareholder, right? It was only post this global financial crisis that there was some conversation around environmental, social, and governance factors that, okay, the shareholders, the owners of the company are important, but there are other stakeholders maybe who are equally important or more important, right? And this conversation has actually gathered steam over time. And when people are talking about the planet, people are talking about the environment, people are talking about purpose. And what people are saying is, there is the corporates who have to do it. Now, my impression or my understanding about corporates is that today corporates are the most powerful organization on world. They are bigger and more powerful than many countries. Some of the corporates, and I don't want to name them, them, those which are listed in the New York Stock Exchange, they are bigger and powerful than many countries in Europe, Africa, Asia, etc. One corporation. And if the governments have failed to bring about a system which can take care of all of us, COVID or no COVID, maybe it is the corporates, when we are talking about conscious capitalism, when we are talking about that the corporate is there not only for the shareholders, but it is there for every stakeholder. It is there for the community. It is there for the individual. And it has the might, the financial might, the intellectual might, the leadership might to be able to make this happen. It can lobby, it can advocate, it can pursue, it can persuade. It can do many things which maybe governments or other forms of organizations cannot do. So during this time of the COVID, this is a thought that I have been, struggling with or trying to come to terms with, that this huge catastrophe, pandemic, whatever you call it, which is going to take so many lives, it would all be worth it if this would lead to some stock taking and some reset in the way we work, in the way we look at ourselves, in the way we value, in the way we have aspirations. Should every economic growth be at the cost of nature's destruction or natural destruction or destruction for our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren? So I will stop here, but this is what I've been thinking about. So health is important, economy is important. But more important than health and economy is, what is the lifestyle that we want to lead as a species, which is non-destructive and which is evolutionary, not merely in material terms, but evolutionary in intellectual, spiritual, nature, all those multiple dimensions. And I will stop here.
Thank you very much. Excellent introduction to the issue and very good input in both the social and the business perspective and the individual perspective on it. We have one more panelist that there is an equally good friend of the Schulich School of Business. We have one more person that has been with us on our journey as the school has made its mark in India, and he comes from a very different sector. He's an engineer and is a graduate of one of the top IITs in India and then Stanford University, and had a career in, as you can imagine, the big global technology firms like Sun Microsystems, Cisco, and then Microsoft. Mr. Bhaskar Pramanik was actually the chairman of Microsoft India for a number of years and did guide Microsoft to become such a strong player at all levels and in all aspects of the global firm in India and around the world. As you can imagine, he is going to bring a lot more insights that come from the technology and what technology has to do with the crisis very critical for us in the discussions we had. Mr. Pramanik was keen to talk about how technology will help businesses going forward, and we're looking forward to hear this.
Thank you, Theo. And, we move from people to technology. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. But I think by now it's evident to most people that technology actually has been a savior in the last couple of months. Frankly, with the lockdowns in all parts of the world, the only way we could communicate with each other, whether it's with friends or whether it is for work purposes or whether it is for family, has been through the internet. And I was just reflecting the other day that, frankly, internet became mainstream for most of us only about 30 years ago. It started around 30 years ago, and then it sort of built up after that. And just imagine if this virus had struck us 30 years ago, perhaps we would have a similar situation as what happened with the Spanish flu in 1918. So I think, we're very fortunate, and I think everybody realizes, sometimes unconsciously, that technology has played a big role. So today, what I really wanted to share with you is what I think are three concerns related to COVID and technology. I think the first concern which most people have is how do we protect public health? And the second is how can we promote an inclusive economic recovery? So while we're taking care of ourselves, while we're ensuring that as many people are kept healthy and safe, we also need to, and we reduce the number of casualties, we also have to look at how can we ensure that the economy recovers so that we can get back our livelihoods. Currently, there's always this debate between life and livelihood, and I think technology can play a role to sort of balance out both, or perhaps enhance both areas. But alongside this debate is also this huge question about the more we use technology, the more the challenges around privacy and cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, where people can hack in, privacy from the fact that you have Big Brother watching over you, you have criminals watching over you, you have all kinds of challenges because more and more of your data is now being accessed by various different organizations, both legal and illegal. So what I thought I'd share with you is how is technology being used currently? Because a lot of it has actually happened without anybody prodding any organization and what we've seen from a business perspective and from a social perspective is that in the last 2 months, there has been more progress on digitization than there has been over the last 2 years. So COVID, in a sense, has given an impetus to what was already there, but now it is accelerating even faster. So where do we see the maximum usage of technology in the current COVID area? I think number one, cloud-based products and services are keeping businesses, governments, and nonprofits functioning and helping small businesses serve their customers and compete. Again, if we didn't have cloud-based technology, which is again just a phenomenon which is about 5 to 8 years old, it would have been very difficult for people to get access to computing. Similarly, we now have extensive broadband as well as mobile networks, which enables these systems to talk to each other. So besides that, there is a number of new cases where because of the requirement of social distancing, limited travel, and lockdown of entire cities, we've seen new applications, extensive applications. And I think the first one, which all of us can relate to, in a sense, we are participating in that at the moment, is that remote working has become a new reality. Practically every organization, including those supplying essential services, have redefined their work from home policies and processes to ensure business continuity, leading to higher productivity, collaboration, and access to data. And let me give you an example of 3 companies whose boards I'm on and who I'm associated with. So one is a clothing apparel company. And you can imagine it's a women's apparel company. They have large stores. They have both online as well as offline, but their business is completely zero. What they're currently doing, all their people are working from home with whatever functions they've been assigned to do. But the design team, which used to be all working together, are now split across multiple cities, and they're across multiple geographies. And the design team is now collaborating using technology to be able to predict or to start the design work for the next festival season, hoping that yes, there will be a Diwali or a Dasera coming up this year. But they have now realized that they don't really need to be together, and that they can work on these designs along with the procurement team, etc., on a work from home basis. The second company I'm working with is a consulting company which provides advisory services to its customers. And typically, advisory services, you have to be in front of the client. Now they have actually redefined their processes. They have redefined what outcomes are expected from their customers and how they will revenue their customers, but based on a social distancing, which is basically working across video conferencing and collaborating and providing that advice which is required by the customer, and the outputs and the outcome is what they have agreed to, and so that they can actually continue with their revenue and their billing. At home, I have a small infant. I just became a grandfather in the month of December, and my grandson unfortunately developed some minor symptoms. So therefore, what do you do? These days, luckily, we have a number of hospitals around the area where we stay, but it was possible for us to actually use video conferencing to actually diagnose. And if for nothing else, it actually gives us a sense of relief that, that there was nothing major as far as the infant was concerned. So I think doctors and hospitals are also providing consultation over video conferencing platforms. And again, this is part of the challenge around social distancing and the lockdowns which we are experiencing. You'll also see education and skills development have moved completely online. Schools and universities around the world are turning to technology platforms for remote learning. In fact, I am spending more time on a variety of subjects, just brushing up on my technology as well as my financial skills. And there's a host of different courses which you can get access to. The most important is not just one way. These are all interactive. You can do quizzes, you can submit reports, you can actually interact with both students as well as the teacher or the faculty member. So the learning experience is also becoming a lot more. And I think India has shown that EdTech is an area which, where there has been considerable development and where we have built platforms and solutions which we are now exporting to the rest of the world. The other one, which I think is not so apparent, is entertainment. Suddenly in India, there's been a huge multitude of different kinds of OTT platforms. Previously, we used to only watch the US ones, Netflix and Prime Video, but now there's a whole plethora of tools, of OTT platforms, which are showing Indian content. And therefore, that makes the lockdown a lot more easier for us to do, for us to stay at home. And it's not just movies, it's museums, operas, musicals, and even sports are now going to become actually streamed to home. I think at the present moment, all of these are at free because they haven't really been able to figure out the billing pattern or billing platform. But very shortly, I can assure you that you will find a lot of this will actually get charged. But it's possible to deliver that across the web. In the financial services industry, and I happen to be on the board of the State Bank of India, and we've seen a spurt in the number of customers who are registered for our YONO digital services. YONO is our digital platform. It's a mobile platform. And we're finding an increase in adoption by consumers, by businesses, as well as farmers. So therefore, again, the financial services industry was always very advanced in the use of technology. And now it's just that become much better with more and more consumers opting to a digital interface. Similarly, it's for insurance. In fact, I had an operation just before, a cataract operation just before the lockdown happened, and I wanted to claim the money from Religare. And you'd be surprised that I was able to process my claims completely from home using just a HP printer scanner, and I even received the money digitally onto my bank account. So therefore, even insurance companies like Religare, which basically insisted on physical forms are now able to redefine their processes so that they can make payments because of the clampdown, because of the social distancing requirements. So that's another example. Government interaction for services also now primarily online, whether you want a pass or a registration, information access, contact tracing, all of them are being made available. And I think the most prominent is the Arogya Setu app, which enables people to keep track of if they are close to any other infected person. So what do we see going forward in the terms of the role of technology? These are being usage which have happened because of forced circumstances. But as we move towards a post-COVID situation, the focus has to be about economy recovery, which has to be inclusive, not just for large corporation, not just for banks, not just for other organizations, but for individual businesses, for small, medium enterprises. So it has to be very inclusive. It has to be for the immigrant laborers. How do we get them back? How do we ensure that they get the jobs? So it has to be inclusive, allowing every country, industry, and citizen to prosper. You will see the greater and more adoption of new technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, social, augmented reality and virtual reality, 3D printing, genomics, drone adoption. All of these technologies, which have all sort of come into vogue over the course of the last 3 to 4 years, will actually, their adoption will accelerate. Broadband and mobile networks will get strengthened, especially to support very vulnerable populations. So COVID is going to, post-COVID era is going to transition to a new way of working. One is that we will have to rethink consumer behavior, because given what has happened, consumer behavior and preferences will actually change. I mean, for the clothing company on which I'm on the board, we are seriously looking at what would be the kinds of requirements for clothes when you're sitting at home. It'll be completely different than when you were, if you had gone to an office, which would have been much more public. So therefore, what would be the impact? Where would you buy? Would you buy in an online store, but you won't be able to touch the fabric? How would you know that you got the right size? How would you get it delivered? So therefore, we have to rethink everything in terms of how are we going to interact with customers. So customers are now increasingly exercising caution on what, where, and how they buy, and we will have to rethink the distribution channel. So that's going to be the same for practically every company. It doesn't matter whether you're a consumer company, whether you're an engineering company, a services company, a bank, or a financial institution. You will have to rethink about your distribution channel, and mostly they will become omni-channels, both physical and technical and internet-based, but electronic channels. But you will have to redefine the processes. It will be a lot more high-tech, but with human touch. There'll also be a demand surge for essential products as companies across the globe scramble to streamline the supply chain to secure immediate operations. And at the same time, there will be pent-up demand waiting for a release for semi-essential and regular consumption categories that do not qualify for the essential tag. So we will see that companies will accelerate the digital transformation. Digital technologies will play a critical role in maintaining daily life through e-commerce and remote working, and they will play a significant role in paving the way to recovery. In the industrial world, the ability to remotely monitor, control, and maintain equipment can help companies to continue operating critical systems and minimize disruption. And in addition to improving resilience, digital technologies will help companies to increase competitiveness, reduce costs, and adapt their business model in what will be a harsh economic environment. So I think a lot of companies are now relooking at both their supply chains. They're looking at on the supply side, they're looking on the demand side, and they're also relooking at the processes internally within their own organization. And they're going to use this opportunity to actually become a lot more efficient. You'll see a shift towards digital labor. The world was already embracing digital work and bots, but COVID-19 should accelerate this shift towards greater automation. Businesses will want to increase the leverage of digital platforms, which can continue uninterrupted in the event of a crisis, and reduce dependence on personnel. And we've heard that, they're using robots to actually come in touch with COVID infected patients earlier in the treatment process rather than have humans in contact. So you will see a lot of that happen. Banking transactions are again another example. Workspaces of the future. COVID-19 could mark a turning point in how people work. We expect to see an acceleration of alternative work delivery models as well as employment constructs. Digital platforms would power these new models. So we're going to see an enhancement of what we would call the gig economy, where you actually may work not just for one company, but for multiple companies, and you may work from out of your own office and from your own space. There would be a renewed emphasis on flexibility as companies look to a more variable cost model and reduce fixed costs. As this crisis has shown, the ability to remain agile during downturn is a valuable asset. Just to give you another example, think about the contact center industry. The contact industry actually had agents who are all clustered together in a contact center. You can imagine in the current situation, most of the contact center companies had to close down their shops and had to move their people home. They also had to move equipment home. And then they had to actually then start servicing the customers. That whole process of what we used to call the BPO or BPM industry had to be redefined very, very quickly so that people could actually move into their individual homes and actually operate. So outcome linked and as a service models for people will also be a lot more. You'll find that more and more as a vendor, people, companies will ask you to deliver a service based on an outcome. It will not be based on time and material. So you'll see a lot more outcome linked and as a service model emerging in the labor market and in the vendor market. Digital skills will become important. And as I've always believed, every human being will have a superpower, which will be a digital superpower. And the combination of human and digital AI capabilities will actually make and enhance the productivity of all kinds of work. Manufacturing is going to be also another area where there's going to be a considerable focus. Because one thing is very clear, that the global supply chains, which every large company and corporate had built over the years, are now going to be rethought and relooked at. And therefore, more and more manufacturing will be closer to the places of demand. And to be able to do that, you will have to automate those plants. So Internet of Things, AI, machine intelligence will all be required to basically be able to manage this massive complex of factories connected to different supply chains. And that's an area where there will be a huge amount of work going forward. In a sense, people will globalize digital, but they will localize profit. But where I see the maximum benefit of technologies in healthcare, data is an indispensable tool for decision making. Technology helps standardize data, provides it for healthcare workers, and supports scientific efforts to discover treatments and vaccines. And technology is accelerating the search for a vaccine and treatments. And this is where a company like Microsoft is helping to create an open machine-readable data set of all scientific literature on COVID-19. They are partnering with a company called Adaptive Biotechnologies to map the immune system's response to coronavirus and will make the data set freely accessible to speed the development of treatments. And basically, they've also made access through GitHub to scientists, the Microsoft developer platform, to power distributed computing project that uses volunteers' personal computers to assist researchers in developing potential therapeutics. So therefore, today, lots and lots of scientists are working on projects to find a cure for the coronavirus or a vaccine or a palliative care. And they need a huge amount of processing power. By using the GitHub developer platform, they're able to couple together large numbers of personal computers with the permission of their users to actually do this computation. And finally, like I mentioned, while all this will accelerate the use of technology, we have to understand that there will be a lot of focus on building trust and security as they become more critical than ever. And we must prioritize the protection of healthcare, education, and financial system from cyber attacks. That is also going to be critical. So it's a brave new world. Lots of companies which are working in these different areas, and we are seeing that what will happen, what World Economic Forum called the Industry 4.0 is going to get accelerated because of the COVID. The disbelievers are now becoming the believers. The slow adopters are now accelerating their processes to start using technology at a much bigger pace. But the end focus is very similar. It is about keeping everybody secure and safe. It is about ensuring that the livelihood of people. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Great, very different perspective on the same issue. Let me start with a question that it is in many of it comes through a number of the questions that came up, and has to do, Mr. Bhatt, with the issue of the financial sector and how actually India's financial sector was not doing great. There were a lot of non-performing loans. The government was pushing the banks, but not necessarily doing something concrete and specific. What's going to happen now? Business are hesitant to invest. Consumers are not spending money. Is the government able to push to keep the economy going and get back on reviving the growth track?
So this topic was not covered by either of the panelists. See, this is a time where the financial challenge for any government anywhere in the world is far more than the challenge that they have faced any time in the past. If you look at the US, they put in about $2 trillion worth of incentives of various kinds across the economy. If you look at Germany, you look at Europe, you look at France, you look at China, you look at Japan, everybody is putting in tons of enablements. Some are coming through the fiscal, some are coming through the relaxation, some are coming through the banking system, but this is being done across the world. In India also, a beginning has been made, and I think right now they are only assessing that how much needs to be done and how much needs to be done sector specific. If the government does not come to help the economy at this point of time with the forbearance and tolerance with regard to, say, NPS and other regulatory requirements, with regard to liquidity, with regard to the cost of money, with regard to building up equity and capital, then it will be really very, very difficult for the economy to survive. In the case of India, it is even more peculiar if you compare it with the developed economy. In India, the bulk of our economy, by which I mean the bulk of employment, the bulk of production, the bulk of exports, it comes from the small and medium sector. This sector has the least amount of resilience. So this sector, the owners and the promoters, when they make money, all of it doesn't go to build up reserves and resilience within the corporate. Some of it goes for personal use, some of it may go for a personal house and here and there. So these people don't have much resilience, and we've seen them. We have seen in the recent past when the economy has been on a bit of a downside, then it is this sector which is suffering the most. Now this sector, there are millions of units in this sector. This sector gives employment to almost 90% of people who are employed in the Indian economy. So if this sector doesn't get enablement, doesn't get help, doesn't get liquidity, doesn't get forbearance from the government and its agencies, then it will be very difficult for this sector to come back and survive. And today, when we are also going towards what is being currently described as a low-touch economy, the restaurants will not come back the way they were working earlier. The travel industry will not come back the way it was earlier. The entertainment, cinemas will not be like that. Tourism is going to suffer. Now, these are the sectors which are the service sector and which in India was providing close to 50% of employment. So it is important for these sectors to be reimagined, revitalized, reinvigorated, and none of it can be done without the help of the government. So I know that there are minds in the government which are engaged with this. I know that the government is seeking widespread consultation from industry bodies, from interested parties, from intellectuals, from academicians to see what can be done. And simply because it is too important not to be not done, that I think that it is going to get done.
It's very interesting because that thing that you talk about, the small and medium-sized industry, there are easily about 5 questions that they were addressed to Bhaskar, and they were talking about the technology element of it. The small, medium-sized firm in India is not sophisticated, it doesn't have the resources to embrace technology. What do you see that they can be doing, should be doing right now? Or as you said, Bhaskar, that they're moving, the technology is taking over and accelerating the transformation.
So if you've actually seen the spurt of growth in technology in terms of the number of use cases over the last 3 to 4 years, a lot of it has been in the what we would call the small and medium corporate sector. And even the way they're getting their funding is through digital. So I think, it's a question of priority. Number one is that they need enough funding and finance to be able to continue to pay for their workers, to be able to continue to sustain their operation. But what is happening is that how they source these funds, how do they spend it, how do they reach out to their customers, a lot of it is already digital. The most important thing is that, like contrast to 10 years ago, if you wanted to go with computers, you had to buy the servers, you had to buy the application server software, you had to buy the database software, you had to buy all the connected devices, whether it was a mobile phone or whether it was a PC. So every element of it you had to own and you had to pay for it. Now you can buy all of this as a service. So whether it's financial accounting, or it is enterprise resource planning, or it is vendor management, or whether it is customer connects, all of that now is available as a fee, which is on a monthly basis. So therefore the cost of computing, and therefore only the fact that it was only large companies which could afford that, is no longer true. Also, if you look at the small and medium technology sector, they are actually innovating so dramatically that they are able to even pit themselves against some of the largest companies. So for example, a lot of the fintech companies are actually built very large portfolios which rival that of the larger NBFCs and even the larger banks like the State Bank and the ICICI and HDFC. So therefore, I think, there will be, while definitely there will be some mortality in the small and medium sector, it not many reasons. A lot of it could be from the demand side and not necessarily the supply, or it could be both. But definitely it cannot be because they couldn't get access to technology. And the other point is that there will be a new breed of SMEs which will all come up, perhaps completely technology enabled, where you will have lesser people, higher value add, and with much vaster and bigger markets. So I think, there is going to be some change there. I do agree that this is the number one priority because, whether the numbers are 80% or 90% of employment comes from the SMEs, the fact is that that is what the government should be looking at. I agree with what Mr. Bhatt has been saying, that is really very critical. Frankly, the banking system at the present moment doesn't have a challenge on liquidity. It has a problem in terms of lending it to people who will pass their test in terms of credit worthiness. And I think what the industry is looking for is some sort of a credit guarantee system, which is what the other companies globally, other governments globally have offered. And I think, again, good minds in the government are looking at that. And again, I would suggest that on the small and medium side, they should focus on the industries which are high employment, which is the travel, the restaurants, the construction, because there a lot more people will gain the benefit of any kind of credit assurance or liquidity.
I just wanted to add one thing to the use of technology in the SME sector. I think Mr. Pramanik put it very well, that now most of the technology is available on an OPEX basis. But this is largely confined to technology in the IT sector. In IT services, whatever it is, you can get it on a pay-as-you-use basis. But some of these small businesses will also require other kinds of technology, which is non-IIT, but which is equally critical, which will reduce costs, which will improve efficiency, which will reduce the need to have X number of people, etc. Now, in addition to IT being available on an OPEX basis, if the government and the Reserve Bank of India could together bring out a series of products where all these technologies, whatever it is, for the SME sector especially, is available on a lease model. Whatever it is, how much it costs, if it is available on a lease model so that you pay for it, on a monthly basis, then I think, the SME sector with these and certain other innovation will be well on its way for a very quick revival.
It's interesting that we're talking about the SME. There is another set of questions that have come up, which is something that we talk a lot about in India that has to do with the global supply chains. And a lot of commentators are saying this is the moment for India to shine. People we will like to move away from China. We would like to de-emphasize their reliance on China as the global source of manufacturing goods. Can India do it? What the government has to do for India to actually take that role. Are other countries in the Southeast Asia ready to be formidable competitors as India is trying to assert itself? And this has to do both with the small companies to help them to grow and large companies to become the manufacturers of the world the way China has been. And I think this question is to both of you in turn.
So I think there is an opportunity here, there is no doubt about it. But we are not the only one which is eyeing this opportunity. There are two things that are happening. One is, say, for example, countries like America, for whom a large amount of the manufacturing capacity for almost everything that they produce is outsourced to China. They want to insource a significant or a critical portion of it back to the US. And for the remainder, they may want to farm it out to other companies in the region. So every country, every major industrial power, which has some of its or significant portion of its manufacturing being done in China, is going to partly insource it to itself. For example, the other day somebody was saying that in the UK, they are ashamed that they cannot even produce personal protective equipment. And even that has to be imported. It's nothing but a piece of plastic, but they can't produce it anymore, right? So these are some of the things that is happening. But the part of it which will be in countries other than the owner country, where the company is incorporated, will be distributed among many companies in the Asian region. And the data that we have, somebody from one of the mutual funds was giving it to me. He had data which was supplied by Nomura, I think, that about 56 companies which are relocating out of China, nearly half of them have gone to Vietnam. A significant bunch of them have gone to Taiwan. It's only very few, maybe 2 or 3 that have come to India. Now, this data speaks for itself, right? That for some reason, either these people are not interested in relocating to India, or we in India do not have the pull factor to be able to attract these companies to us. Now, there are a lot of reasons for it. Some of them are structural and therefore rigid, and some of them are just policy and regulation, and they could be changed or done at the stroke of a pen. But I think this is too important an opportunity. We don't have a huge time window, maybe 3 months, maybe at best, maybe 6 months, in which we have to make some of these changes. And if we could somehow bring ourselves together and make this happen, then clearly this transfer from out of China into India could become far more significant. So that is one place where it can definitely happen. But for that, we have to bring about certain changes before it can happen.
Oscar, some thoughts?
No, I agree completely. I think, India has experimented with manufacturing, throughout my 40-year career. I've seen this, with either through protection, high import tariffs, and even when they opened up, I remember when I was with Microsoft, Nokia is a good example. Nokia built a state-of-the-art plant in the south of India. It was producing over 150, 200 million phones for export to the rest of the world. And then the enforcement agencies got greedy, and they started levying taxes on a prospective basis, not a forward-looking, but backwards. Because of which the bill for Nokia was so large that they had to close down. Similarly, when I was with Digital Equipment Corporation, we built, and this is I'm talking about in the late 80s, early 90s, we built a state-of-the-art manufacturing plant for computers, for wax computers, because at that point of time, there were heavy imports and there was computer import was banned. And then at the stroke of the pen, the government of India allowed free imports of computers, and our $15 million investment went down the tubes in barely just a couple of months. So I think, we don't have a policy for manufacturing. We don't have a reputation. We have very hungry and greedy tax enforcement and other government agencies, which make it very difficult. Vietnam, every sector of the economy is open. I mean, I was surprised. I visited Vietnam last year. They're numbered 2 in the world on coffee, then getting close to number 1 in apparel. They're building their own cars and automobiles. So they are very hungry, and it's a small country. I think the only reason why, if I was a US or a Western country and I was wanting to ship manufacturing, one of the key reasons which would be in India's favor versus Vietnam and Taiwan is that we can withstand Chinese bullying. Both Vietnam and Taiwan are very close to China. And therefore, at a moment's notice, if they feel that much threatened, they can create a lot of uncertainty. But I think, as far as the West is concerned, India is perhaps the only other, only country or nation here which can provide that umbrella security. So I think, that is something which we need to talk a lot more about to the West, not just about policies and not just about the capabilities which we have here. But I think we should also exert our geopolitical muscle, saying that we would be a safer destination, a long-term ally of the West.
That's a nice positive thought to close things. I would like to, I'm mindful of the time, and we don't want to take the time. We have dozens more good questions. What we will do, we will pause the questions. I will ask the panelists to make some comments afterwards on them. But I would like to ask my very good friend, a great supporter of the Schulich School of Business, Professor Raghunathan, to try to put a few words together around this great comment. In the form of an introduction, Professor Raghunathan has been both a banker and a professor and academic, was one of the 50th management thinkers from India, and he was the CEO of one of India's creative banks, the ING Bank in India. We're fortunate today, after a long academic career, that he is now or director of our campus in India. Not only he is the author of 12 great books, he is the author of about 500 papers and articles. He has a regular column on the Economic Times, but he also has probably the largest collection of locks in India. Raghu, if you don't mind sharing your closing thoughts.
Thank you, Theo. I think between Mr. Bhatt and Mr. Pramanik, they have covered the people's angle, the need to reset, and how digitalization might have been advanced by almost a decade because of COVID, which may be called the flip side of what COVID has dealt us all. So in many ways, for instance, Mr. Bhatt talked about how technology has actually impacted education, health, entertainment, insurance, financial sector, the entire rigmarole. Mr. Bhatt talked about how the SME sector, particularly the micro sector, is likely to be the first casualty, as they always are in any, whether man-made or God-made or natural disaster, they're always the first to suffer. In fact, this morning I wrote an article in the Deccan Herald called Time for Governance Reforms. This comes close to what Mr. Bhatt talked about, the reset. This is the time we need to take to reflect on what do we need to do going forward and how to do it by setting India on a 2.0 kind of a platform. The old thinking will not work. Bhaskar gave a whole lot of examples why the old ways are likely to change and so forth. But these are all, to my mind, like solvency factors. In the long term, unless we do these things, we won't be there. But there are liquidity factors, so to speak, which means here and now, immediately post-COVID, like Mr. Bhatt said, a whole lot of people will lose jobs. A whole lot of them are going back to their villages. So even when the lockdown opens and the COVID removes its clutches, so to speak, how are we going to get all those immigrants back to the factories? Now, capacities of our factories immediately are likely to be very strongly diluted significantly. What policies will really forget the demand side? On the capacity side, how are we going to be able to manage that? I think these are the questions India has to worry about. We need to worry, for example, when the crude prices were over $125 a barrel, and today when it is between $0 and $20 a barrel, our retail prices remain the same. When the LIBOR today is barely half a percentage point, our repo rates are hovering closer to 6%. And interest cost is one of the largest costs, and it will be even a bigger cost in the times to come because of the defaults that may happen and the credit quality that may fall and so on. So what is it that India needs to do? Is it India has never floated 50-year bonds? Is it time for us to think about 30 and 50-year bonds? We talk about a recession staring us in the face, and in recession is when you dig holes and pay to some people, and then you fill up holes and pay the rest of the people. So could we be doing something similar, but in a more constructive way for our infrastructure sector? Because we have the long-term money that we can use this time to bring the interest costs further down by floating long-term bonds and creating that investment in the infrastructure sector. We need to use this time to think about all of it. We could have used the lockdown to repair all our roads, for instance, in this country when the traffic was minimal. We could have painted all the roads with all the lines and signages, which cannot be done in the Bangalore kind of a traffic jam. Now, some of these we may be trying to do, some of these we may have missed the bus, but to me, these are liquidity questions that India immediately needs to answer. And I think between Mr. Bhatt and Mr. Pramanik, they have painted a very comprehensive picture of life after COVID. Thank you, Theo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bhatt. Thank you, Bhaskar Pramanik, for great insights. Thank you for great, frank conversations. We also thank both Rontu for spearheading and organizing this, and of course, Vito for putting the technology to make this work across the entire world. Because indeed, in over 250 participants that we had here, they come from all sorts of countries and all sorts of regions. Before I wrap things up, I would like to remind you that we have another panel on Thursday early morning for Toronto, Thursday late afternoon for Mumbai, with 3 other members of our advisory board who will be complementing in their thoughts and insights what excellent comments and suggestions we heard today. From me and the Schulich School of Business, thank you all for participating. Thank you all for attending. You have a good day, and we will see you virtually on Thursday. Thank you very much.